Ebb Tide is the 11th episode of the 5th season of The Golden Girls. This is directed by Terry Hughes, and as always there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode chronologically and share some thoughts. And it's definitely quite an emotional episode, not all of the way through, but there are certainly times when it gets a little heavy. But as always with the Golden Girls, whenever they address something that's quite emotional, we also have a nice amount of comedy as well. Starts off with Blanche very excited because she's going to be at the Citrus Festival ball. The newspaper says that she's 35, and then she gets a call from Big Daddy. He wants her to visit him, but she's busy with the ball, but she will afterwards. Sophia also reveals that she wants to rent the room out to boarders, people who have been unable to get hotel rooms for the various festivals. And there we have our two main narratives. Next day, Blanche is very happy that she got a plate from the festival with a citrus design on it. And then she gets a phone call from Virginia, from her sister. And it turns out that Big Daddy is dead. And Blanche seems unusually fine. Unexpectedly fine, I guess is a better way to put it. And it turns out that she just thinks Virginia's playing a practical joke on her. She spoke to Big Daddy yesterday. This is just Virginia trying to get her to go over there because Big Daddy wants to see her. And then she starts to cry. And we realise that she feels guilty about not going to him when he called. And I accept that she feels that way, but she doesn't need to. There was absolutely no indication that her father was on his deathbed. So I understand why she feels that way, but she absolutely shouldn't. And Dorothy goes with Blanche, and Blanche and Virginia get into an argument about who's there the least for the family. Virginia is played by Sheree North, and I like that we had Dorothy there. I definitely think that was a really good decision, and we'll come back to those in a moment. We're then back at the house, and we have characters Peter and Maddy, played by Paul Eiding and Brandis Kemp, and Sophia has rented out Blanche's room, and she also kind of rented out Dorothy's and Rose's as well. We're then back with Blanche and Dorothy. I think the pace between going back and forth between the two, I think, was very, very effective, very well handled. It also meant that the heavier scenes were never heavy for too long, but they stayed very true to the atmosphere that I feel they should be presenting. By which I mean the scenes with Blanche were never that funny. There was a moment in a second where I feel like they were trying to make it funny, but I think it was just more uncomfortable. But the comedy mostly did come from back at the house with Rose and Sophia. Blanche is looking through some old photos, and Dorothy really makes fun of her for being chunky as a child. And a passing comment I think will be fine, but she really laid it on quite thick. And not only do I not think it's funny, but I also don't think it's Dorothy. I feel like that's a little unusual for Dorothy. Maybe that's just my reading of it, but I think they were trying to make it funny, trying to lighten the mood, but I found it a bit annoying more than anything. We then cut to a really merry scene at the house. It turns out that the people renting rooms are having a party, and then the phone rings, and Sophia refuses to answer it because it's Dorothy, and it rings 3 times, and ultimately Rose ends up lying, even though she didn't want to. And then we hear a smash. And before they brought the plate into the kitchen, I think it was very obvious that smash was Blanche's plate. And I think the main reason it's obvious is because earlier on, when Rose came into the house and she saw Peter and Maddy, did I refer to her as Mandy earlier? I hope not. Either way, her name's Maddy. And she saw Peter and Maddy on the sofa. They were eating off of Blanche's plate, and that's why I think that was obvious, because it obviously just brings it all back together. And then we have a scene that's difficult but incredible. Blanche takes flowers to Big Daddy, apologises for not being there, and it's just this incredible, really, really well-written speech, and it's so moving and so gentle. And I like that Blanche got the chance to say everything she wanted to say. At least I believe it was everything she wanted to say. And then Dorothy comes to get her for the taxi, and it's just, it's beautiful and moving and really, really emotional. And then we do get the comedy picking back up again with the final scene, which I absolutely love. Blanche and Dorothy come home, but not before Sophia has a chance to rectify the citrus plate situation. She buys it from somebody for a considerable amount of money, and just as that person leaves, Blanche and Dorothy arrive home, and they hand the plate to Blanche, and Blanche says this plate represents the old me, because she did some soul searching while she was away and realised that there are things about herself that she could change, and that plate represented her old attitude. So she takes the plate and immediately smashes it on the floor, and it was so funny, and Sophia's face was fabulous because she just paid a considerable amount of money for this just so that she didn't have to tell Blanche, oh, we rented out some of the rooms and there was a party and they smashed her plate. So I found that to be a rather brilliant way to end things. It's definitely a really moving episode, definitely very emotional for not the whole of it, but certainly the emotions were kind of quite severe at the beginning when we find out and Blanche gets really upset and clearly feels guilty. And then towards the end again with that beautiful, beautiful scene. So well written, gorgeous performance, just really incredibly well done. And then we bring the comedy right up at the end with the smashed plate, which I rather liked. So needless to say, Ebb Tide is a pretty fantastic episode of The Golden Girls, and one where honestly it's pretty fabulous. Dorothy making fun of Blanche's weight as a child, I don't love. As I said, if it had just been one or two comments, it would have been okay. But she was really, really going at it. So I didn't love that. I didn't think it was funny. I just found it to be awkward and uncomfortable. But that aside, Ebb Tide was pretty fantastic. And ultimately, it's a pretty brilliant episode of The Golden Girls.